to the day. It was, I guess, a normal weekend for you.
Yeah.
The weekend your mom went missing. Tell me what you were doing and what happened.
Well, I had given Mike for Christmas a boys' trip to go play tennis, and so he had been gone for the weekend. So I took my kids actually to Carson's.
Let me ask you something before we even get into this. What does a Harvard-trained lawyer do when she knows something, but can't say it yet? She goes quiet. Carefully, deliberately, strategically quiet. And she lets her body language do the talking instead. That is Savannah Guthrie right now. And once you see what I'm about to show you, the 7 chilling details investigators keep circling back to, you will never look at this case the same way again. Because this isn't just a missing persons case anymore. This is a story about what Savannah knows. And who she's quietly not protecting. Let's start at the beginning. January 31st, 2026. A Saturday evening in Tucson, Arizona. Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, mother of Today Show anchor Savannah Guthrie, was reported missing on February 1, 2026, after she failed to show up for a virtual church service. Wikipedia: the previous night, she had taken an Uber to her eldest daughter Annie's home in the Catalina Foothills for what was, by all accounts, a completely normal Saturday dinner, maybe a game night, the kind of evening that anchors a family's week. She never made it back. She was last seen around 9:45 p.m. Savannah Guthrie later revealed her mother was taken in her pajamas, without her shoes, without her phone, and without her critical heart medication. NBC News. Now, here's what I need you to hold on to as we walk through these 7 details. The Pima County Sheriff has officially cleared the Guthrie family as suspects. They are victims, that is the official statement. But cleared as suspects doesn't mean the investigation stopped circling the same address. And that distinction, right there, is what this entire video is about. Investigators don't revisit the same residential street multiple times by accident. Think about it from a resource perspective. Law enforcement agencies are stretched thin. Every repeat canvass of the same block costs personnel, hours, and interagency coordination. They do not send agents back to the same neighborhood over and over unless something, a specific evidentiary thread, keeps pulling them there. And that's exactly what happened at Annie Guthrie's street in the Catalina Foothills. Retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffendafer noted publicly that she was concerned the neighborhood had been canvassed twice, because a properly executed canvass, she explained, should not require a repeat pass unless something found the first time needed follow-up, or unless new information kept pointing investigators back to the same location. They weren't returning because they ran out of other places to look. They were returning because the evidence kept pointing back there. Now, Savannah Guthrie went to Harvard Law School. She knows exactly what it means when federal investigators return to the same address with the same questions on multiple separate occasions. She understands the geometry of that. And yet, not one public word about it. Not one Instagram caption mentioning the repeated visits to her sister's street. That silence, from a woman who speaks for a living, is detail number 1. Here's a question nobody in mainstream media has asked directly enough. When dinner ended that night, when it was time for Nancy to go home, why didn't Annie drive her? Annie was right there. The drive is 4 miles. Nancy is 84 years old with a serious heart condition. By every ordinary reading of how a family evening ends, the eldest daughter drives her elderly mother home. That is just what you do. It didn't happen. Tommaso Cioni, Annie's husband, Savannah's brother-in-law, was the one who drove Nancy home. He pulled into her garage, walked her inside. She was last seen at approximately 9:45 p.m. NBC News. The garage door closed. And that was the last confirmed moment anyone outside the Guthrie family's immediate circle saw Nancy Guthrie alive and free. Now, there are perfectly innocent explanations. Maybe Tommaso offered. Maybe Annie was tired. Maybe it was just easier. These explanations might be completely true. But investigators don't get paid to accept the natural explanation without testing it against the structural one. And structurally, placing Tommaso, and not Annie, as the last confirmed person with Nancy creates a very specific chain of last contact. It positions the person who sees the layout of her home, who drives the route, who watches her walk into solitude, as the son-in-law. Not the daughter. If the plan that unfolded 4 hours later was known in advance by anyone in that household, then the decision about who drove Nancy home isn't a small domestic detail. It's an architectural choice. And that is detail number 2. This is the detail that gets worse with every week that passes. Shortly after Nancy disappeared, a vehicle connected to Annie and Tommaso's household was towed and taken into evidence. The Pima County Sheriff's Department processed the family's vehicles as part of the investigation and officially cleared the entire Guthrie family as suspects. AZ family. Cleared. As suspects. Official statement. So why, weeks later, had that car still not been returned? Sheriff Nanos described the scope of what was done with the family's property. He said investigators talked to them, took their phones, their computers, processed their vehicles, processed their homes. Processed is a very specific word in law enforcement. It means forensic workflow, extraction, analysis, GPS history, cell data, movement logs, trace evidence. When phones and computers are processed and returned, the process is complete. When a vehicle is processed and not returned, that means the opposite. Something in that car, or in the data that car produced, has not yet served its investigative purpose. Something is still live. Sheriff Nanos himself said, "We still have a lot of digital evidence, forensic evidence, and we continue to plod along." AZ family. A forensic process that continues this long on a vehicle belonging to a cleared family is not a bureaucratic delay. It is a process that found something still being used in an active investigative thread. That is detail number 3. On February 4, 2026, just 3 days after Nancy was reported missing, law enforcement arrived at Annie and Tommaso's home. And among the agents entering the property was a man wearing a shirt with 4 letters, ICAC. ICAC is the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. A federally coordinated, specialized unit trained specifically in technology-facilitated exploitation, encrypted digital communications, and the extraction of data from devices that their owners never intended anyone else to read. That agent was also carrying what analysts identified as a Cellebrite universal forensic extraction device. If you don't know what that is, it's the tool law enforcement uses to get inside a phone or device that wouldn't otherwise give up its contents. It bypasses encryption. It recovers deleted messages. It surfaces data the device's owner believed was permanently gone. You don't carry that device to someone's home unless you have a specific device in mind, and a specific reason to believe that device holds something the investigation needs. The Pima County Sheriff's Department responded carefully. They said an acronym on a shirt is not indicative of a particular crime associated with the case. They did not deny the agent was there. They did not deny the device was present. Former CIA officer Tracy Chandler Walder offered one explanation, that ICAC agents specialize in digital architecture used to send ransom demands through encrypted channels. That covers the ransom angle. But Cellebrite isn't for tracing ransom emails. It is for extracting data from a physical device already in someone's possession. Someone in that house had a device. That device had content investigators needed. They brought exactly the right tool to pull it out. What was on that device has not been made public. And the car still hasn't been returned. Savannah knows about the Cellebrite. And Savannah has said nothing. That is detail number 4. On March 2, 2026, 1 month and 1 day after Nancy was reported missing, Savannah Guthrie was seen outside her mother's home, joined by her sister Annie and brother-in-law Tommaso Cioni. The family placed yellow flowers next to a makeshift tribute at the edge of the property. WRAL.com. Now, on the surface, that's a grieving family paying their respects. But Nancy Grace, the former prosecutor who has spent her entire career reading families in crisis, watched that footage and drew a very specific conclusion. She said that watching Savannah put her arm around Tommaso convinced her that Savannah does not believe Tommaso is responsible for what happened to her mother. Savannah held him. She pulled him close. In a moment she knew the world was watching. She made that warmth visible and deliberate. But Nancy Grace didn't finish the question. If Savannah does not suspect Tommaso, who does she suspect? Watch not just who Savannah holds. Watch who she does not hold with the same ease. Two sisters. 31 days of shared grief. Standing at their mother's memorial. And the space between them does not look like the space between two people carrying identical grief. Savannah Guthrie has spent her career understanding exactly what images communicate. She is a trained journalist operating under legal counsel in a live investigation. She knew cameras were there. Nothing she does publicly right now is accidental. One sister she holds. One sister she manages. That distinction, made deliberately, on camera, at a memorial, is detail number 5. The FBI obtained doorbell camera footage of an armed, masked man outside Nancy Guthrie's home, a man described as approximately 5 feet 9 inches to 5 feet 10 inches with an average build, wearing a face mask, gloves, and a black Ozark Trail hiker pack backpack. CBS News. Every investigator who has analyzed this case has landed on the same conclusion: this was a targeted, planned, intelligence-driven operation. Former FBI agent Brianna Fox noted that the suspect almost sauntered up, like it was his house. Former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe said his approach was not particularly furtive or concerned. This was not the movement of someone afraid of being caught. This was someone who had already accounted for the risks. He knew about the camera. He knew Nancy would be home alone. He didn't come prepared for a caregiver, a visitor, or a dog. He came for one specific target with the confidence of someone who had already mapped the absence of anyone else. He knew about the pacemaker. Nancy's Apple Watch, phone, and daily heart medication were all left behind. NBC News: that is not an oversight. That is a decision. Someone understood the medication created a biological countdown. Someone planned for that. And the FBI has been examining January 11th and January 24th as specific dates of investigative interest, 2 Saturdays before the abduction. Neighbors told investigators that agents were asking for security camera footage from both dates. 2 Saturdays. The same day of the week as every family dinner at Annie's house. The same day of the week as the night Nancy was taken. Someone was watching this family on Saturdays. Learning a routine that only someone inside this family's social orbit would have any reason to know. Because that routine, Nancy's Saturday evenings, her Uber rides, her game nights at Annie's, wasn't on any social media profile. It existed inside the daily life of this family. And the last time it was gathered, confirmed, and made operationally complete was at a dinner table in Annie Guthrie's home. Detail number 6. February 7th, 2026. Savannah sits between Annie and her brother Cameron. She reads a statement into a camera. And she opens with 8 words that have never been properly examined in public coverage of this case. We received your message and we understand. 8 words. Chosen under extraordinary pressure by a woman who went to Harvard Law School, working alongside law enforcement advisors and legal counsel. Former CIA officer Tracy Walder described this as a heavily scripted, carefully prepared video. Only 3 days earlier, former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe analyzed the first family video and concluded it read like an attempt to establish communication with people who had not yet made real contact. His read on February 4th, the family had not yet received a legitimate direct communication. 3 days later, we received your message. A second purported ransom note was sent to Tucson television station KOLD on February 7th, which a station anchor described as containing sensitive information and no deadline, a note designed to establish credibility, not demand money. CNN. And Savannah, with Annie and Cameron beside her, said we understand. Not we believe. Not we hope. Understand. A verb that implies active comprehension of something complex. Something that, once you have the context, makes sense in a way a random ransom note from an unknown criminal would not. Now watch the 3 people in that frame. Savannah reads with the precision of a lawyer reviewing a document she has approved. Cameron carries the visible weight of a man processing 7 days of public grief. And Annie, watch Annie in the moment Savannah says we understand. Watch whether that word lands in her face the way it lands on a person hearing it for the first time, or on a person for whom it is not entirely new information. 3 siblings. 1 sentence. And it does not settle equally across all 3 of them. That is detail number 7. Now here's what I want you to sit with. Any one of these details, taken individually, has an innocent explanation. A car held in evidence? Processing takes time. An ICAC agent at a home? The shirt is just a shirt. Federal investigators returning to the same neighborhood? Standard procedure. A daughter who didn't drive her own mother home? The evening just resolved that way. Individually? Explainable. But 7 details, all confirmed, all pointing in the same direction, all circling the same household, all feeding into the same behavioral portrait of a woman who clearly knows something and is carrying it with the discipline of someone trained in both law and journalism? That is no longer a collection of coincidences. That is a pattern. And patterns are what criminal investigations are ultimately built on. DNA recovered from inside Nancy Guthrie's home does not match Nancy or anyone in close contact with her. CODIS, the FBI's national database with over 19 million offender profiles, return no match. Investigators have turned to genetic genealogy, the same science that identified the Golden State Killer after decades of failure through conventional methods. Parade. Sheriff Nanos has said, "We're getting there." After 2 full months, no arrest, no named suspect, and he still said closer. AZ family, that is not a man losing faith in his investigation. That is a man who knows something the press conference cannot yet contain. As of the 8-week mark, Savannah Guthrie posted a message to her Instagram asking the Tucson community for renewed attention, writing, "Someone knows how to find our mom and bring her home." WRAL.com. Think about that sentence. Not someone out there. Someone knows. She didn't say whoever did this. She said someone knows. That is the language of a woman who believes the answer lives inside a world she has sat inside, at a dinner table on a Saturday evening in Tucson. Nancy Ellen Guthrie was born January 27, 1942, in Fort Worth, Kentucky. She lost her husband in 1988 when her children were still young, and she didn't collapse. She raised 3 children in Tucson. She built a life of faith and routine, church on Sundays, family dinners on Saturdays, an Uber to Annie's house because she didn't want to be a burden. She went inside. The garage door closed. And then someone who knew exactly how to find her, came through the night and took her from a life she had spent 84 years building. She deserves every question this video has asked. If you know anything, if you saw something in the Catalina Foothills in January or February, if someone you know changed their behavior around February 1st, please call 1-800-CALL-FBI or submit a tip at tips.fbi.gov. The reward is waiting. The family is waiting. And if this video helped you see this case differently, if it connected dots you hadn't seen connected before, share it right now with one person. One share puts this in front of someone who might hold a piece of information they didn't know mattered. Drop "Find Nancy" in the comments below so the algorithm pushes this to more people who need to see it. Subscribe and hit the notification bell, because we are not stepping away from this story. The next episode goes inside the FBI's surveillance timeline, what January 11th and January 24th actually reveal about when this plan was built, who was watching, and what that means for where this investigation goes next. The case is not cold. Nancy Guthrie's story is not finished.